So in this tutorial, we're going to do a bit of satin stitch. Now, satin stitch is what we use to fill a small area with just a single block of colour. Or I suppose you could do it striped if you really wanted to. But yeah, it's a really nice stitch for just covering a small area. You don't want it to be too big of an area or your satin stitch will look quite loose. So nice small area like this is good. So I'm just doing my stab stitches here in the middle because we're going to be covering up this whole circle. If you're not sure what the stab stitches are all about, just have a look at my video on starting off your stitching. Okay, I'm going to do a third one there just to be sure. Right, cut that knot out of the way. Okay, so satin stitch. For this, I'm just using 2 strands in the needle, just 2 of them. Less strands tends to make your satin stitch look a little bit neater, but it's totally up to you how many strands you want. So we're just coming up on the outside of this circle. It's on that outside line. Come up. I like to lay my thread down so I can see that it's straight. I should say as well, I always start in the middle of a shape and work out to the edges, okay? It's generally just easier to do it that way. So I'm laying this down so that I know my line is nice and straight, and I'm going to go in again at the bottom of that circle, okay? Just like that. And again up beside that first stitch along that drawn on line there. I want these stitches to be quite close together. And again in at the bottom. So we're just filling this with some long straight stitches essentially. Now it will be tempting to come up at the bottom. I've gone out of focus. There we go. So it will be tempting to start coming up at the bottom, right beside where you've gone in, because obviously that uses a bit less thread than going back to the top all the time. But it means that your stitches can't get in quite as close to each other. So it is better. I know it uses up a lot more thread. You have to keep threading the needle a lot more frequently. But it is better. Your satin stitch will turn out a little bit neater if you keep going back to the top and in at the bottom. And you can see we're starting to fill out this circle now. But that is essentially your satin stitch. You're just filling up that shape, whatever shape you might have there, with lots of long straight stitches. Oops, hit the camera there, apologies. Okay, I'm running out of thread here now, so I'm just going to pause while I rethread my needle. Okay, I've filled in a good portion of that circle now. As I was saying, you do want those stitches nice and close together so you can see I don't have any gaps where the fabric at the back is showing through. Okay, so you want this to look like one big block of colour. You can see my stitches are just getting smaller as I get out to the edge of this circle. I think that's as far as I can go. So that's half the circle filled in there. I'm going to do some stab stitches over here and then fill up the other half. But that is essentially your satin stitch. So just long straight stitches to fill up that space. Okay. So obviously you want to fit your stitches to whatever shape you are filling out. But that's essentially it. It's a really nice stitch. It makes it really look quite satiny, I suppose. That's why it's called Satin Stitch. It's a lovely one to fill out some small shapes and just have that nice big block of colour like that. As I said, you can change the colours of threads if you want to. If you wanted it looking kind of stripy or something like that, you could do that too. But that is basically your satin stitch. So hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. Just drop them in the comments or send me a message. But yes, good luck with your satin stitch and see you in the next video.